Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second of our online events. This one's about the fresh opportunity presented by the Future Food Framework. Welcome back to those of you who joined us for the last event, and welcome to newcomers. And we will talk a little bit more about the Southwest Food Hub shortly. But just to run through the plan for today, if I can firstly thank Rachel and the Scown team for setting the event up and for supporting the Southwest Food Hub. So for today's event, we'll start with an introduction by Simon Jupp, MP for East Devon, who talked to us a little bit about how this is making noises in the government level. I'll give you an update on the Southwest Food Hub and how things are rolling with us. And then we ask the question why this matters. We're delighted to have Peter Fletcher from Exeter University to talk about how how important local produce is for them and how they see it as part of their future strategy. And then also we're delighted to have Tom Chartres-Moore from Scown, who will give us a bit of an insight into how small and medium-sized businesses can prepare for what is a fresh opportunity. What I should say is, as Rachel alluded to, the Q&A is running throughout the event. And we encourage you to use that. Whilst we haven't got the opportunity to respond to all the questions today, we will take on board the questions and we will respond to them. And if at the end of the meeting we've got a bit of time spare, perhaps we can pick one or two to actually come back to you on there. I should say that the Q&A looks as if it's being operated by a moderator, which sounds very robotic. It's actually Ellen Bright who's operating the Q&A for us, and Ellen's central to everything we do here at the Southwest Food Hub. So it is a person and not a system. Okay, so without further ado, for too long the public sector has proved to be a very difficult marketplace for small and medium-sized food and drink producers to access. It's time for change, and I'm delighted that through the promotion of the Future Food Framework, we've been engaged with a number of MPs at local and at national level, all of whom are extremely enthusiastic about making this happen. They are keen to unlock this opportunity, and at the forefront of that is Simon Jupp, MP for East Devon, and I'm going to hand over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Greg, and good morning. I am very pleased to be here today to open this online event and would like to thank Greg and Glenn for their continued hard work in promoting innovation and bringing together small and medium-sized suppliers with new potential customers in the public sector. This is really exciting. The agriculture, food and drink industry is the UK's largest manufacturing industry and plays a vital role in the UK's food supply chain, which contributed 121 billion to the UK economy in 2018, supporting around 4 million jobs. Many of these are in our region, the Southwest. The UK agriculture, food and drink industry has been significantly impacted by coronavirus. Although the industry has done exceptionally well to adapt in extremely difficult circumstances, exports have been hit, and the government is committed to supporting this most important of industries to get back not only nationally but also into international markets as well. A couple of months ago, I hosted a visit of the Minister for International Trade to a farm in East Devon, where we spoke about the great potential for UK products on the global market. It was a very positive visit, and since then we've seen some really positive announcements about trade deals around the world. But it did leave me thinking, why do the Japanese want to buy UK cheese, and why does so much of our fish go overseas? I still find it disheartening that I have to really search to find UK produce in my local supermarket. Even more concerning, I remember my time eating in the infamous BBC canteens across the country, where I had no idea about the origins of the ingredients in the food served. I think what the Southwest Food Hub is aiming to achieve is brilliant, but the platform in isolation isn't enough. As a society, we all need to radically shift our thinking about the food we eat. It baffles me how we have come to demand raspberries in our shops in January, and the avocados are available for any millennial at any time of year, even myself. We need to change our habits for the good of ourselves and the good of our planet. I will continue to work with parliamentary colleagues, the NFU and other organisations to ensure that we can come together to bring about that change. I'm also a realist, and I recognise that providing a better market for goods will be the biggest agent of change. Governments can provide the overarching framework, but it's up to initiatives and businesses just like the Southwest Food Hub to deliver and sustain that long-term change we all accept we need. I welcome the work of the South West Food Hub in engaging with public sector institutions, potential suppliers and producers across the region in order to prepare and enable the delivery of the new framework. I look forward to seeing it go live in the summer next year. And Greg is right. There is an awful lot of excitement amongst MPs in the region about this initiative. I've spoken to the majority of MPs in Devon, and they support what the South West Food Hub is doing. And so I believe it has a bright future. I'll now hand back now to Greg at the South West Food Hub.
Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you on such a critical day with big news due to be announced around COVID. We feel really privileged that you've taken the time to come and join us, and it does underline the level of support for this initiative, because many people will be thinking that in the past there's been a hint of opportunity, but it's never quite come to fruition. But I'm sure now, with the help of yourselves at political level, we can make this part of the COVID recovery and not something that gets kicked down the road to come back to after COVID. So thank you very much for your time. I'd just like to now continue with a bit of an update surrounding the South West Food Hub. And for those of you that have tuned in before, I've tried to make it quite concise, but there will be some some things you already know. This is really for the purpose of the newcomers. So just a bit of background is where did this all start? Well, back in 2014, the government produced a document called A Plan for Public Procurement, setting out the opportunity that exists in public sector supply for food and drink. And numbers such as 1.2 billion were thrown around as to the scale of the opportunity. And the majority of that to date has been wrapped up, for want of a better word, with tier one suppliers, and that's driven largely by the complexity in public sector and the essential need for food to be served on the plate for that sector to consume. You can't have any vulnerability within the chain. What the government said at that time is they'd like to change the way they buy food and drink for the public sector, and they'd like to open up to make a third of the supply to come from small and medium-sized enterprises. That would in turn create a new £400 million opportunity for the agricultural sector to support that with. And those were numbers that were quoted back in 2014. What's happened between 2014 and now? Well, at the time this was talked about, the way in which it would be delivered was never outlined, and it's a hugely difficult sector. All of the variables within the food sector are really difficult to get your head around. So therefore, for the importance of delivery, sorry, I'm just making sure that somebody's not trying to send me a message. So for the importance of delivery, it needed some technology to take part to actually deliver the event. So in 2016, there was a small scale pilot executed in Bath and North East Somerset to supply schools there. And the idea was actually to use a similar platform that was used for other public sector procurements called dynamic food procurement. The pilot was deemed successful. The resulting factors from that particular supply through the schools resulted in a 6% net savings. So whilst there was some cynical views before that actually buying through shorter supply chains might actually increase costs, costs were actually less, largely driven by logistics, so thereby reducing the carbon footprint as well. To just sort of bringing things more up to date. So how did we get involved and why are we here? So back in the sort of early part of 2019, the Crown Commercial Services, the government buying arm, decided that they wanted to run a scaled up pilot following the Bath and North East Somerset example, and they identified the Southwest as a region where that could be really effective, based on Baines being in this region, but also the number of producers and the agricultural sort of spread throughout the region. So the Southwest was nominated as a region, but it was clear that in order to firstly get producers and processors to believe that this was an opportunity, we needed to really communicate with the food and drink community in the Southwest Southwest to tell them what this opportunity is and explain to them how they might be able to access that. So through a number of interactions with Crown Commercial Services in the early part of 2020, the days before COVID, we actually were issued with a memorandum of understanding from Crown Commercial Services, which said they'd like us to be the exclusive agency, if you like, to talk to the Southwest from the Gloucestershire down to the foot of Cornwall, to explain to them what the Future Food Framework is, and then further to explain how people can get involved, and then finally help them to get on board. And what I would stress is that this is a pilot that we believe will be successful, and the Southwest success will then lead to a rollout across the UK. And actually, why wouldn't the same way of supplying food be applied to the private sector too? So this is the start of something that is huge enough to start with, but is a massive way in which the food sector can benefit in the longer term. So in terms of the Southwest Food Hub, we incorporated as a company in a community interest company in May of this year. Glenn Woodcock, who will be on the call somewhere, is pictured here with myself, he had me doing the work in his greenhouse, and Ellen Bright in the background has been a bit pivotal to the success so far. We've set out our ambition, and our ambition is to make a third of the money spent with public food and drink in the Southwest to be spent with small and medium-sized enterprises by 2026. We'd like to beat that. We know that in some institutions they're well ahead of that, but across the piece, if you look at it really transparently, there is a significant way to go before we can reach that level. So that's our ambition. And as I said, the way in which we're trying to work is primarily our focus at the moment is to engage with people. So this is the second of the online events that we've ran, and we want to engage and tell people about it. And as I said, then we will work to help enable people to get on board and to get ready for this opportunity. That's not only telling them about how the systems will work, but also there will be requirements to meet certain assurance standards, certain accreditations, and that's where the Southwest Food Hub can help people to get ready. And then when the system goes live, which we hope, as Simon alluded to, will be in the middle part of next year, we will help people to actually get on board. There will be some paperwork to fill out. It's public sector, so that's the way it's going to be, but we will try and simplify that and nurture people through the process so it can make it as painless as possible. So for us, the key next steps really lie in Westminster with the Crown Commercial Service. They need to press ahead. They've assigned a budget to put the technology platform in place, and they need to actually find the, there are a number of people that have tendered for that work, but they need to actually run the tender and get the provider in place, so that when everything else can follow on and we can meet that goal of being live by the middle of next year. Now that's been challenged by COVID. A number of the Crown Commercial Services resources have been redeployed to track and trace. And so one of the big battles we have at the moment, which Simon and Anthony Manuel and Neil Parrish is helping with, is to actually re-raise the profile of this within Westminster, because we need Crown Commercial Services to get motivated now in order for this platform to be delivered in the middle part of next year. So that's our number one battle. But we believe that there is enough will and enough momentum to make that the case. But in the meantime, we will continue to engage with people like yourselves and the wider food and drink and agriculture sector, working alongside people like the NFU, DEFRA, EFRA, and other organisations to make sure that you're well informed and ready to engage at the point at which we're ready to go. And what I would encourage is, and I'll repeat this at the end, is please stay in touch with us. We have an online hub. Through the online hub, if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll make sure that we keep you informed of any and all developments, but we also running several social media platforms, so you can keep in touch there as well. And if you have specific questions, please drop us an email to info@Southwest Food Hub, and we'll be delighted to respond to you. So that was it from me for now. You'll hear from me again later, whether you like it or not. But now I'd like to move on and introduce our second speaker. Peter Fletcher is central to the procurement team at Exeter University. I asked Peter if he'd talk to us about why buying local was important to him and the university, how that might help them towards their long-term goals of meeting the carbon neutral objectives. And also, we're working with the likes of Exeter University to try and understand how we can help to bridge that gap between public sector and suppliers, and make this engagement as seamless as possible. So I'd like to hand over to Peter, and I'll be back with you soon. Thank you.
Fletcher, I'm the category manager for Soft FM within the University of Exeter, which covers anything from food, retail, cleaning, fleet, transport, travel, that kind of thing. And I'm also the Sustainable Procurement Lead within our team. So Greg asked us to come along and have a little chat about what it is that we're doing as an institution in terms of purchasing food and drink within our catering and retail function. So, I mean, you'll all be aware of the University of Exeter, I assume, in terms of its position within the economy and within the region. We've got a number of strategies, sovereign strategies that we call, that reflect our position within the Southwest region. And all of those strategies really underpin a conscious drive to support the wider region economically, socially and environmentally. We've got a couple of stats that say, you know, we support over £700 million of output in the area alone, almost 7,000 FTE jobs in the heart of the Southwest LEP, the LEP. So within our organisation, talking particularly now about kind of food and drink, we've got 12 food service outlets, 5 retail shops, 3 catered halls. We've got a hospitality, a conferencing and events business. We also host regular street food markets on campus, and that's just on our Exeter campuses. We've got a reflection of that down on our Cornwall campus, down in Penryn, down near Truro. Within this, we've got to drive commercial growth, which helps the university to meet its educational needs. And we've got an incredibly diverse community that come onto campus and that we need to meet, from just feeding the students that are staying on site in the residences, their breakfast, their lunch and their dinner, to, as I said, you know, these kind of conferencing and events and different things that we've got there. So it really puts us in a unique position to support a strong food and drink supply chain through a region which, as Greg kind of touched upon, has got really firm roots in food production. Within the university, I think it's quite difficult in that we've got a delicate balance to be traversed in meeting the needs of this really diverse community. We've got an incredibly diverse culinary demographic with an international student and staff body on campus. And trying to sort of mix that with what is a drive to buy more local and use more local produce. But there will always be, as we said, that balance in terms of trying to provide our students and our staff with a genuine, authentic kind of home from home feel, where we may need to purchase more kind of exotic cuisine. That's on top of meeting the whole raft of dietary needs, the trends that we've got to stay alert to, while still understanding what the customer wants. An example of that being huge growth in plant-based diets at the moment, products like tofu and seitan and tempeh, etc., which come from all over the world, and is a great awareness of this in the media and amongst our students in particular at the moment. However, despite that, we look at our stats, our number one seller under our Isca Eats banner, which is our new click and collect service, is still a traditional campus burger made from beef. So despite there being kind of all of these different food trends, we've still got to understand what's going on campus and how we can maximize that. We're also a key supporter of Taste the West. I understand my colleagues in the catering team put on the annual awards ceremony for the Taste of the West, and we, you know, as a result of that, using products and produce from the suppliers in the region, we either engage directly to spot buy with those, or we bring them in whilst working with our primary food service provider, engaging them, bringing them on board, and we're actually host over sort of 40 lines from, as a direct result of the Taste of the West work, which sit on in our retail shops or on our core buying list. So why do we do it? Well, there's a couple of reasons really, and one of the key things at the university is we declared at the start of the year an environment and climate emergency. Lots of organisations have been doing this across the UK, across the world, and what we did is we got a really big group of incredibly talented academics and professional services staff to work on a big white paper, which was a result of declaring this emergency. We've got some of the best climate scientists in the world working for the university, so we put all of their knowledge and their skills to good use. Coincidentally, our work which we did on that white paper, we were informed yesterday, actually won an award with The Guardian in their Higher Education 2020 awards list for the best sustainability project across all of the universities, which is quite nice, seeing as I sat on that group as well, which is quite nice to know that all of that hard work is being recognised. But basically everything that we're doing in terms of our carbon output and our impact socially, economically, environmentally, all falls back to this white paper which we produced. So the slides I've got up there now is kind of reasons why we got to act and some of our goals, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But food procurement comes in as a core element of that. Any one of you who works for organisations who have to monitor your scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, you'll understand that procurement forms a huge basis of your scope 3 emissions, which are most likely to be the highest. So a couple of bits on what we're doing at the moment, not only as a result of that white paper, but just things that we've been working on over the last couple of years. I talked about there the reduction in meat and the move over to plant-based diets. So we have reduced that on our menus. However, as I said, our stats are still showing that meat is still very much in demand on campus amongst our students. Using sustainable fish farmers, we've recently started working with the MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council, have approached us to assist us in looking at how we buy, how we can amend our specifications and our scopes going forward in terms of purchasing our food. We moved to glassed bottled water sourced from Devon rather than Wales. We've got a little milk refilling station in our main marketplace, our main shop on campus, which is incredibly popular with our students. We're fair trade accredited across most of our areas. And also we hosted at, I think it was the start of this year, a circular economy event. So we've got a number of academics who are experts in the field of circular economy, and we invited a whole bunch of local suppliers and producers to come along and work through this workshop to understand what they can do to move more towards a circular economy type of model in the future. And this is something which we'll be pushing forward with further over the next few years. On top of that, we've got a Sustainable Restaurant Association Level 2 accreditation, which we got last year. Again, it's another one of these kind of external companies that comes in and audits what you're doing and how you're doing it. We just snuck into stage 2 to 2 stars. So we've got a little bit of work to do, as you can see kind of from that infographic there. There's a couple of areas which we're incredibly strong on, treating our staff fairly, 84%, pretty good. But as you can see there, we've got 22% on serving more veg and better meat. So it gives us a nice platform to understand what we need to focus on. How do we focus on that? Well, that again is going to be supported by a strong food and drink supply chain in the Southwest, whether that's through our tier 1 supplier at the moment, which we utilise, which we use to spread out then and bring in those tier 2 and the longer supply chain from the local area, but back in via that vehicle. Bring us on to 2020. Everybody probably that's attending this now has been impacted probably in a negative way, to be quite honest, with 2020 and the challenges that it's brought. However, there's also been opportunities. As you can imagine, as a university, back at the start of the year, all of the staff, all of the students were sent home from campus before term 3 was kicked off, and then everybody returned again in September under quite difficult circumstances. So what we had here was a real difficulty, and we needed an incredibly strong supply chain to support us through how we could meet the needs again of our customers. So whilst most of our staff weren't on site, a lot of the students were. So we had to respond to unpredictable, significant peaks and troughs in short-term demand. We got limited physical storage space whilst having a server. This is just the population of students who are in catered halls was over 1,200. And that's on top of all of the normal campus operations, our cafes and our shops. So we were having significant fluctuations in demand based on, when certain blocks are going into isolation. We may have had to produce 500-600 packed lunches per day to be delivered to doors or to dorms within that, which could go from 0 or 10, up to hundreds in a day. So we had to take pretty much overnight a flip from serving a kind of traditional canteen meal style to a delivery meal style almost overnight. We're only able to do that by having an incredibly close working relationship with our supply chain, with our suppliers, to be able to flex and move the different types of foods that we're going to be able to serve, because obviously serving at a canteen and under a warm kitchen is very different to what we can put in a box and give to a student, whilst also taking into account the allergens and all the various other things. We'd also moved to only 3 deliveries a week from our main supplier to reduce our emissions and vehicle movements on campus. So again, that put additional pressure in terms of the fulfillment of all of those vehicles had to be spot on. So we had to have confidence in that supply chain to be able to meet that. It's no good if 10% of the order was missing. We can't have students going hungry for 2-3 days in the meantime whilst we try and get hold of those ingredients, or have to get on the phone and speak to other suppliers. So we had to have this great confidence in the supply chain's ability to meet that. The reaction, how do we do it? As I said, it's that effective and responsive relationships with the supply chain. We needed confidence in their forecasting and their demand management, their ability to suddenly to react to those pressures. We had a great openness, trust, commercial transparency with our provider, as well as an ability internally to adapt, and that's changing our menu choices. Or you can see a couple of the pictures that I've got up on there are our click and collect and click and deliver services that we had to stand up in pretty much immediately, same as many hospitality businesses across the UK had to do. But actually, they've been pretty successful, and it's something that we're going to continue post-COVID anyway, which leads us on really to the opportunities and our strategy. What we're trying to do on campus is emulate almost a whole high street in one single campus. We're not just a coffee shop, or we're not just an Italian diner. We have to cater for, as I said before, that real diverse range, and it's quite difficult to try and stay ahead of the high street, who effectively are our competitors, the whole high street. We're trying to make sure that the students stay on campus and spend their money with us. We've got that range from incredible top-end fine dining experiences in our hospitality and conferencing business through to an everyday international street food and sandwiches. And how do we meet that? The only way we can do that, as we said, is having a strong supply chain, which not only is the supplier that we immediately contract with, but it's the entire supply chain, tier 2, tier 3 downstream that supports those. And flexibility is key. And it goes beyond food as well. We need to have access to cleaning, chemicals and packaging, and how we do this, and also seeking value add from that supply chain. So as a public sector body, we get an incredible amount of FOIs, Freedom of Information Acts. Where do you get this from? Where do you get that from? So we need to be able to lean on our supply chain in terms of assisting us in responding to those, along with market intelligence, menu development, product development, reporting across everything from what we're buying, how we're buying, and the carbon footprint. Links that back then to our environment and climate emergency targets. The second one, probably a bit hard to see there, but is to reduce our scope 3 emissions, which is our indirects, by 100% by 2050 and 50% by 2030. We'd estimated from that about 15% of the scope 3 emissions are from what we call hospitality and catering. So clearly food and drink is an incredibly important element of that strategy. What we need to do is be able to measure and report the carbon data. We can't do that without support from the supply chain and understanding who's producing what, how are they producing it, and how we can buy things in ways that are more environmentally conscious. And I think organisations like the Southwest Food Hub can really support those SMEs to upskill in that area. Some organisations will be on top of it. Others, it's going to be quite new, quite scary in terms of all of these new requirements that the likes of us are going to be asking in terms of carbon literacy, etc. Moving on again with the carbon footprint. We've done a lot of streamlining, as I said, in terms of our model, which is to mainly contract with a couple of big tier 1 suppliers that are supported, as I said, by the tier 2 and tier 3 straight into them. So what we did is we dictated a number of local lines to be implemented within that main contract. What that allowed us to do was to reduce the diesel truck visits by 50% on campus. Over 400 products from the Southwest are on our current supply list. It's growing every quarter. Whenever we look at that's growing again. We've got electric vehicles on the site for our own delivered food service. Most of our campus vehicles are electric now, 80% of the fleet. And reducing the food miles as well, and by reducing the number of suppliers and utilising the supply chain in that way. Final point really then is a question that Greg and the team kind of posed, was how I think the future food framework could reshape the future of public sector procurement, how it can open up opportunities. And really it came down to a couple of things for me. It's providing the small producers and suppliers access to a market which has perhaps traditionally been barriers, really put barriers up there to them getting there in terms of the supply volumes. If you can imagine how much we spend as a large organisation, many smaller businesses that aren't able to supply at those types of volumes, and what the Future Food Framework will allow is to break that down into smaller manageable chunks by using the technology platform, by using logistics platform, to be able to gain access into those larger businesses. What it should also help with as well is not having to fill in, probably if anybody of you sat there now that's tried to fill in a public sector tender document before, it's a big, complex legal document. And quite frankly, you know, if you're a small producer of, I don't know, a specialist type of cheese, you're unlikely to have a great experience in filling out complex legal documents. Yet for some reason the public sector determined that you've got to fill in this great big form with thousands of questions just to try and get your cheese in on a counter in an organisation like ours. So I think it's going to break down the barriers in having access through something like the Future Food Framework. The flip side of that then is really from what we need as an organisation, and that's that guarantee of provenance. It's incredibly important at the moment, particularly if we look at risk management. There's been big stories in the news over the last few years on allergens and what happens there, and increasingly there's going to be more and more environmental audits. With the government pushing their green programme, we've got our own green restart. We're leaning harder and harder on our supply chain to be able to provide us with measurement and reporting and statistics in terms of the carbon, the embedded carbon on the products that they provide for us. Again, not everybody's going to have that level of expertise or experience in being able to provide that kind of information. So this is where the likes of the Southwest Food Hub and CCS, who are running it, are able to provide that support, that resource and that training to be able to give those smaller companies access into the organisations like ours, whilst we're still able to meet all of the requirements that we would have, because they're not going to just go away. In fact, my guess is that it will become more and more legislative in terms of how we report. At the moment, the reporting on carbon is pretty lightweight. It's a lot of estimation, but I think that's going to get more sophisticated as time moves forward. So we as an organisation will definitely welcome any help into the supply chain there in terms of carbon literacy, in particular in my world. It's incredibly important. And also, I think we've got a kind of an example here. I've put up a couple of names. I'm sure, I think I saw one of the attendees was from one of these earlier on. But some of the companies that we're using at the moment, we traditionally had a direct relationship with, but now come via our tier 1 supplier. And I've got an example with Chartres-Moore Dairy, for example, who've actually managed to expand who they're providing to. So we moved away from a direct relationship with themselves. But what we did is we engineered and worked with our tier 1 providers to supply into them, and now they've actually got access to an even wider customer pool than they did with just providing with us. So although on the surface it looked like we'd moved away from the local supplier to a national, actually we stuck with that supply route in from our dairy provider, who has actually gained even more business as a result of that. So I think it's often worth digging in, into kind of headline assumptions that could happen from the way in which we move. And I think the Future Food Framework really kind of operates on pretty much the same principle as that. We're using a company called Bidfood at the moment to do that. Future Food Framework are going to be acting as that intermediary to widen your marketing pool, your market in total, as well as providing that support, but giving the confidence to the buyers, because that's what we all still need. We're big, dynamic organisations that need to have absolute surety over our supply. That's probably enough from my voice. I've gone over my time a little bit, but I don't think the chat function is working at the moment in Teams. But if you've got any questions, please post them over to the guys at Southwest Food Hub, and they'll get back to me if there's anything for me specifically, and I'd be more than happy to speak further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. A really good insight into the great work that you're doing at Exeter University, and I think you should be held up as a fantastic example of what can be done. But I know that's come with a huge amount of effort to actually get to the point you are now. And thanks for highlighting, how difficult it can be, but how demanded the use of more shorter supply chains is within the marketplace for not only for the the goodness that comes with locally sourced products, but also through that resilience that they can help to supply through tricky times as well. So I think I thank you for coming along today. I think that sets out what we should aspire to. And you asked the question, it's extremely difficult, and that's why the need for the South West Food Hub to be in place to help with that. And we've got support from our local enterprise partnerships and to enable us to have people on the ground, as we have in the West of England Combined Authority, in the Gloucestershire area, and right here in the heart of the South West, on the ground there and available to work with suppliers to get them ready to get onto the platform, and also to work with the anchor institutions such as the universities. We've had meetings with Exeter University already, with a lot of other education, hospitals and other public sector organisations within the region, because what we want to try and do as well through the course of the next sort of 6 months really is identify any of the potential bumps in the road. We want to know what the likely challenges and blockages are likely to be, so that we can help to find solutions for those, because what we know is there's a will at both ends for this to work. What we know, because of history and because of just the fact that we've got such a fickle, vulnerable, potentially supply chain, we need to make sure that we can, whatever we do, reinforces that and doesn't fracture it. So and as part of that, there's a big need for SMEs to be ready, not just with the help that we can give, but for themselves as well. So our next speaker, Tom from Scown, we've asked him to sort of maybe give us some insights into how businesses should prepare themselves for supplying more customers and scaling up, as would need to be the opportunity to meet the opportunity with the public sector. So I'd like to hand over to Tom from Scown.
Hi, Greg. Thank you very much for that. And hello, everybody. So in case you don't know about Scown, I think I'll give you a very quick elevator pitch. We are a Southwest-based law firm with around 330 different members of staff across a number of offices, although obviously remotely working for the most part at the moment. And we have a specific food and drink sector, which I head up. We have a number of different disciplines in that sector, because food and drink businesses, has been alluded to by pretty much everybody this morning, are very diverse. So we have corporate lawyers, property lawyers, IP and technology lawyers, all in that same sector. And I want to talk just a little bit about the makeup of what the food and drink sector in the Southwest looks like from the experiences I have. So I also sit on a board called Food and Drink Devon, where it's a 300 strong membership organisation of mostly SME food and drink businesses, all based in Devon. So my experience from Scown and my experience from FTD is that there is, I would probably go with a high percentage, 90%, let's say, that's a made up statistic, but 90% of food and drink businesses in the southwest of England are SME. And within the S of the SME bracket, they are often run for one of two reasons. And this is a bizarre feature of food and drink, is that they're run for money, which a lot of people will need to put a roof over their head, or they're run on morals, because people are looking to make a difference and change the way that the existing status quo is operating. So they're probably producing something in a new or exciting or different way, or they're doing something which is more environmentally sustainable than somebody down the road or somebody elsewhere. So what does this mean? Well, this means that actually having a framework that's being described this morning, and having an opportunity to have a centralized hub, and I agree with Simon's comments at the beginning of this, which was that the hub is not the be all and end all, but it is certainly very useful. These are the routes by which businesses can seek to thrive and grow. In most circumstances, the clients who are at the SME end of that bracket will be looking to grow, either to expand their own operation because they want to make a difference in the world, or because they need to continue to grow in order to survive. It is not necessarily a growth to thrive, it is a growth to survive. Many of those businesses will be thinking that the opportunity for growth will be through the most common commercial outlets, and those are both on trade and off trade. Of course, on trade at the moment is having a torrid time, and is broadly predicted to have a torrid time probably for the foreseeable. Even in light of the news of vaccinations and the reduction of tiers, there is probably going to be a reduced amount of people trading in an on-trade environment. And in addition to that, it's a very difficult area to get into, because you will need most of the time to be listed with a commercial supplier, and you'll have to find a logistics operator that can produce and distribute your produce if you're a producer or manufacturer. It is, however, less incongruous than supermarkets, and unfortunately, they seem to hold a top trump card in the eyes of many. And in the food and drink industry, I see a lot of businesses yearn to be listed at Waitrose and Tesco's and Sainsbury's. And what they don't always fully appreciate is that there is a very slim chance that that is going to be a sustainable supply of product. What they will find, however, is that they might be put on 90-day payment terms. What they might find is that their demand may go up on a week's notice or go to zero on a week's notice. These are all things which you have to deal with in the commercial environment, and these are all things which can be challenges for any business, but especially those in food and drink, because there is a knock-on effect through the supply chain for any producer of food and drink businesses where they're worried about the onward supply of their product. So a future food framework where there is a centralized hub for supply into, and what we're talking about here is essentially supply into government, is sustainable, it is continuous, and it has consistency. And there are then, flowing from this, two things that any business needs to consider. If I'm doing this to make money, is this an opportunity for me to make more money because I'm going to be supplying more products to more people? If I'm producing more food, am I supplying it to more, am I providing more food to more people, or am I providing better quality food? And am I helping my own business achieve its own consistency? Consistency is a really important word and a really important factor in food and drink, because you will not find repeat purchases of products where you have variability in your consistency. This is something that has to be driven from the purchasers. Typically, however, in a commercial relationship, Tesco, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, they might care for your consistency, but they'll care more for the brand price point. They'll be caring more about what else they can sell and how slowly they might be able to pay you. So looking at this is an opportunity for a different kind of growth. And if that growth is to survive, then that growth is essential to achieve consistency. The alternative is that you look at this as an opportunity for you to warrant your sustainability. And you can look at how you are making a difference in the marketplace, and you can drive that difference by being the supplier who is providing the items which are either more environmentally sustainable, or they have a different, you have a different approach in production. But ultimately, this is a route for you to do that. However, again, the key word will be consistency. There was talk earlier about entering into complex government contracts. This is a level up. If you are going to join a food hub network and you are going to be providing your product on a consistent and repeated basis, you are going to find your businesses in a stronger position as a result of it. There will invariably, and I will make no apology for this, there will be pain, because there will be growing or sustainable pain as you diverge or develop your business into a way that it can continue to grow. And if it's growth for survival, that's great. But if it's growth to thrive, that's even better. And I can't think of a better way of thriving than making sure that you're supplying those organizations that need these products and that are currently or partially already getting those products provided from elsewhere, than having them provided with less air miles, with higher quality produce and more consistency. So what do we need to look at as an organization thinking about going into this then? There's going to be contractual obligation. There's going to be thoughts about your control of your brand, so trademarking. There's going to be control around your insurance for your product and liability. There's going to be all the sorts of things that you would have to consider for going into a supermarket or going into a logistics chain or going into on-trade. And to that end, these are things that you'll have to do anyway. So as a food and drink business that's thinking, is this a higher burden or is this more work than if I were to get a contract with Tesco? The answer is probably no. The answer is that you should be doing these things to ready your business for growth, or ready your business for sustainability, or ready yourselves for producing consistency across your business in what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're fishing. It doesn't matter if you're farming or you're producing drinks. The whole point here is to be able to do something repeatedly and well so that you can continue to grow your business. There is invariably going to be times when that isn't possible, and actually the fluctuation in your supply and your demand is going to be met by a relationship which is governed by contract. So your contracts are going to be really, really important. There will invariably be fixed contracts in relation to the government, the almost supply to government. But if you look back the other way, where you're getting your products from, what you might find is where previously you were having deliveries on an ad hoc basis of potatoes that may have been coming from anywhere in the country, because you now know that you need a set amount, because you now know that you're producing this product on a Thursday, you're going to have a contractual obligation with your supplier to provide potatoes of a certain quality, size and location to you at a certain time, at a certain date. All of these things add to the resilience of your business to better cope in times like now. And a pandemic is never a good example of why you should have a contract in place. But it is a good example of how a business can be built for resilience and how a business can diversify and look to continue to grow in a time where, as has already been mentioned, opportunity amongst disaster. So I'm not going to speak for too long because I appreciate nobody wants to hear a lawyer rattle on and give you loads of information, which at the moment there's nothing to do. But I'm saying that this is a fantastic opportunity for food and drink businesses. There will be pain to go through it if you are not set up for supply at a national or regional level. If you are at a regional level, this is a really good leveler to bring you up to a national level. And if you're already at a national level, this is a fantastic opportunity to do something which is on your doorstep. And to that end, it's a no-brainer. So those are my thoughts. Those are sort of the key messages. I appreciate there's no Q&A. So if anybody wants to ask further questions, feel free to do so by email or Twitter.
Thanks very much, Tom. Yeah, I can feel the passion coming through because I know you play a fantastic role within Food and Drink Devon and for the region. And you know, I've experienced many times the support and the great insights that Stephen Scown bring to our marketplace across the region. So thank you very much. And just picking up on a couple of those things. I was sat in on a meeting this week with the Cabinet Office, with the NFU and DEFRA, and I can assure you that there is consideration being made to how we can make this opportunity accessible to more SMEs. For example, historically, before you get through the first phase of a public sector contract, you needed to be able to state that you had 10 million worth of liability insurance in your insurance policy, which many SMEs don't need to have. And already there's changes been made to say that actually, would you be willing to step up and make £10 million worth of liability insurance? Now, maybe not all the way, but it just shows there is give. Also, the Cabinet Office are very quick to point out that through the pilot, suppliers were paid within 14 days of supply, and that was guaranteed. So actually, they would be amongst the quickest payers amongst your customers. So there are upsides there as well. Also, another big thing that is a change for the good is that rather than driving so much focus towards price, the government widely is now far more interested in the social value that you can impact by making the right purchasing decisions, and through buying from your local economy through local supply chains, you generate an awful lot of social value, and to the extent that even in the contracts before this platform goes live, social value is being doubled in its value of tender contracts from January 2021. So all the right messages and the vibes are coming out, but that doesn't sort of underplay the significance of us keeping that momentum and making sure that the platform goes live. And I can sense that in the background, people are saying, well, tell us about the platform. For those of you who haven't joined us before, you will be asking what the Future Food Framework is all about. And what I would say is that we will talk more about that in the next session. We have talked about it in previous sessions, but fundamentally what it is a technology platform that at one end allows suppliers to enter based on meeting the specification required, which are tailored to be achievable by SMEs, and at the other end the anchor institutions buy through the platform and they're able to more specify how they would like to buy on a dynamic basis. So it's not 3, 4, 5 year framework contracts. They can choose what they want to buy tomorrow. They can set in mini competitions and buy for 3 months where you have more volatile marketplaces, but it gives far more flexibility at each end of the chain, and in the middle, as opposed to a lot of the decisions on what supply being made by food service suppliers, there's a logistics company that are purely assigned to collect, consolidate and deliver the produce in a one-stop shop to the anchor institutions. So it takes out all of that control that some of the tier ones have at the moment on the in-between. So as I say, we will talk more about how the platform works, but I just want to reassure people that there is give at both ends to try and make this work, and we're going to make sure we keep up the pressure. Now, apologies for the Q&A not working today. We battle with different online facilities, and I have a problem with Teams, and yeah, that's something that we can't recover. However, what I would say is that Ellen's taken a few questions on email, and as I said earlier, we encourage you all to please sign up to the newsletter or fire questions through the Southwest Food Hub, and if we can just show our contact slides, that'd be great. But in the meantime as well, we have got a question for Peter, and the question for Peter is, do you actively promote the provenance and the buying decisions you make at the point of sale? And then actually, do you think that the purchasing decisions are based on the fact that you're buying through shorter supply chains? Sorry, Peter, that's a question for you. You might need to just unmute. That's it?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. The short answer is sometimes. We, as an organisation, are very active on social media and website. So Instagram accounts for the different brands that we have within not just the university. We've got a number of different catering and retail brands that sit under that, which we put a lot of time in terms of the marketing deployment against that. And ensuring that we're trying to stay active. Obviously, with students, they're a younger crowd, a lot younger than me, and are reached in very different ways than perhaps I would be if I was looking to try and buy something. So there's a lot of information that goes on there, probably not as much as we could do. However, I think the question was asking whether we think that drives the choices in terms of actually at the point of someone buying anything. So far, our kind of research is showing that it's not having as big an effect as we perhaps thought it might be. What we've actually decided to do, and it's something which we've kicked off recently, is we're more moving into the nutritional side of things. So as opposed to being just on the provenance in terms of where the food has come from, whilst that's important, I think what's incredibly important, perhaps maybe more so at the moment to our students, is whether it's healthy. It's not, they don't want to just throw anything in their bodies anymore. So we've actually linked up with making the most of us being a university. There's a new nutrition course which is being run, I think, out of the med school. And they're working closely with our catering and our kitchen teams to develop new menus and develop marketing material that supports what it is that we're producing, we're providing on a nutritional basis that will go hand in hand with the information that we have in terms of where the food comes from. But I think it's an area that we do need to expand on a little bit further, and that we are doing so. But yeah, no, thank you for that question. Hopefully that answers.
I think that's good, and it prompts me to remind you of another thing is once the technology platform is in place, it does allow a lot more innovation to come through, because we know that much of the innovation comes through SMEs, and the food market moves at such a pace. So with a more open and dynamic marketplace, it allows a lot of those things to come to be available to public sector buyers a lot quicker. And one of the longer term positive effects that's been surfaced is in hospitals. So hospitals, for example, whereby it's now being considered what can be done with specialist diets within the NHS to actually improve the ongoing health of patients and actually reduce the bill of the NHS in the long term. It requires long-term thinking, which to an extent has been not the case in recent years, but in other countries such as Holland, this is used to really good effect. And again, it's where the suppliers can help and work with the buyers to make these things happen. And I think that's another key thing to point out, that through the platform there will be more dialogue between suppliers and buyers, and therefore more ability to be able to respond and react to these opportunities. So I think that's a really good point made. So I think we're just before closing, we stuck to our hour. We're very conscious, we want to try and keep these briefings to an hour, because hopefully we can cram enough in to whet the appetite and get people engaged. But you should just see in front of you now that we've got all of the means by which you can contact us. Please keep in touch. I've had a couple of messages today to say why aren't we able to join, and why don't we know about it? But join in, sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you informed. We need to keep pushing the message out. We'll also be very soon launching a number of events that will be taking place from now forward, mostly obviously in 2021. Before closing, I'd like to really thank our speakers, Simon Jupp, Peter Fletcher from Exeter University, and Tom Chartres-Moore from Scown. I'd like to thank Ellen in the background for the great work that she's doing with the South West Food Hub, Glenn Woodcock for all of the work he does to make this happen, and I'm the mouthpiece, so get to take the credit. And I'd also like to thank Rachel and the Stephen Scones team for delivering the event, and also Stephen Scones generally for being one of the sponsors that helps us to keep the momentum and take this forward. So at that point, I'd like to just reiterate that we are here. Talk to us outside of the event, and hopefully look forward to seeing you all at the next event. Thank you very much for your time.